Shalom, and welcome to my channel. I am J. Allen Bennett, and this is The Chosen and On the Spectrum Analysis, where I deep dive into the series The Chosen from an autistic perspective. In this scene, we have Nicodemus sitting down to talk to the Pharisees and disciples of Capernaum, and he goes into talking about how he loves Capernaum and loves their fish. So he thinks that their fish is exquisite, and he loves the Sea of Galilee, and so do his children. And it goes into talking about how his children don't like going into their sea because it is salty and dead. And I can understand that because I don't like salty Dead Sea either, even though I've never been to the Dead Sea. I've been to an ocean before, and the salt water tastes horrible, so I can just imagine that the Dead Sea would be all the worse. So he talking about where he's from when he goes and visits his parents, his kids' grandparents at the Dead Sea. And so that's the Dead Sea there, and that's where he is in the Sea of Galilee. And we see this whole land talked about, including the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea, in Numbers chapter 34. In Numbers 34, the meat butter, 34:3, where the Jehovah is talking all about the borders of Israel before they actually get into the land. And so we see the Salt Sea is part of those borders. Yam HaMelech is the Dead Sea or the Sea of Salt Sea. Yam is sea, and HaMelech is the salt. Melech would be salt. And so we call that the Dead Sea or the Sea of Salt. And then if we go down to verse 11, we see the Yam Kinneret, or Yam Kinneret is the way you would pronounce that. Either way is fine. The Sea of Kinneret is the Sea of Galilee. Back then it was called Kinneret. We could see that in my Tanakh. Yam Kinneret is the Sea of Galilee, and Yam HaMelech is the Sea of Salt. So this is the geography. Okay, so to give you some context of where Nicodemus is in the world, where he's teaching at, this is where I am right now. And then we go over across Australia, across China, over here to this area here. I have it starred. I have Jerusalem starred. This is the Mediterranean Sea. This is the North Atlantic here. So this is the Hayam HaGadol right here. The Mediterranean Sea, or the Great Sea, as it would be called in the Bible, the Hayam HaGadol, Mediterranean Sea. And Nicodemus, where Nicodemus is from, is around here. I have it starred, that's Jerusalem. So this is where Nicodemus lived, in Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Israel. Jerusalem. That's where he lives. And this... Yeah, got lost there for a second. So this is the Dead Sea. This is the sea that he was talking about. His kids do not want to be swimming in that sea, which I can completely empathize with, because who wants to swim in a sea of salt? That's just, that don't taste good. That's gross. I don't think anybody wants to swim in a sea of salt. It's just pretty much all salt. It's gross. Just no. No thank you. I don't want to swim in that sea. So, this is where Nicodemus came from. He traveled Okay, so he traveled all the way over to here. This is the Sea of Galilee here. Sea of Galilee. The Yam. This is the Yam Kinneret. Or Kinneret. Yam Kinneret. This is where Nicodemus is giving his teaching in Capernaum. This is where we're talking about all the fish. This is the coast of Capernaum, the pier. This is where they would be fishing. Here, fishy, 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 fish. And maybe I have my doubts that this was the synagogue that was going on in Jesus' time, but maybe this is where Nicodemus was teaching while he was giving his little Bible study to all his disciples that were there. Nicodemus had disciples, rabbis have disciples too, but all those young people that were there, they were all the disciples of the rabbis that were there. I'm pretty sure that was the implication anyway. So this is, I guess, maybe the synagogue that Nicodemus was teaching at that time. The Nicodemus of the Bible might have actually been there. The real Nicodemus, and Yeshua would have gone there as well. I assume if that synagogue is that old, which it could very well be. I don't know. So that is where they're hanging out at. So this is the Sea of Galilee right here. This is where they're hanging out at most of the time when they're this is their home base in Capernaum, around this area. So that'll give you a little context of where we are. Then Nicodemus goes into talking about the fish, and I don't think it's any coincidence that he's going into discussing fish, and what we learn is that they've been fishing on Shabbat. Some of the fishermen in Capernaum. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that we see Quintus telling him that about the taxes, and makes that little joke about what can breathe under the water, however he worded that joke. I don't know if you'd even call it a joke or what that was, but I don't think it's a coincidence that he brought up fish when in the next scene with Nicodemus we see this issue with Shabbat, fishing on Shabbat, and says what goes into the body of a man defiles him. The complete opposite of what Jesus says later on in the actual scriptures. Jesus says that it's not what goes into the body that defiles you, it's what comes out of you that defiles you. And so he goes into saying that your actions are being watched, studied, and Elohim has entrusted you to be exemplary in every way. And a part of me agrees with that, even though I don't ascribe to being constrained by religion in any way, but I do believe that we are called to be an example to the world, to be a light to the world, and for the world to look at us and be like, I want what they have. And if we look religious and boring and conform to religious rules, we're just as much conforming to the world that way. I think we are called to a higher standard, but I think that it shouldn't be out of constraint and out of a feeling of obligation. I don't feel like I'm confident that it shouldn't feel like obligation. It should feel like a joyful experience to um, be different from the world and to live our lives with with companionship to Jehovah. It should look it should look enjoyable, like we're enjoying our lives, and we should look like we should show the world what we have, and that we have something better than what the world has to offer. And if we don't look like that, then I think something is off about us. We should enjoy life to the fullest. Is how I believe that the disciples should live their lives. The disciple to Jesus should live their life as somebody who enjoys their life and isn't being constrained by religious legalism, because truth is infinite, I believe. I mean, if we're just living by one tiny slice of truth, then we're not truly living by truth. We're just living by a constrained portion of it. And truth is infinite, and there's just so much. Jehovah, the Creator, is infinite, and so when we think that we have the truth, in a way we're right, but we only have a small portion of it, and by living by just one small portion of truth, we're just limiting what we can be and who the Creator is, who Jehovah Elohim El Shaddai is, by being religious in the way that the Pharisees want to be. But he is right that we should hold ourselves to a higher standard. It's just that the high standard should look exciting to the world, not boring and drudgerous, religious. So yes, I agree with that. That we should live our lives exemplary in every way. This is truth. What he's speaking there is absolutely truth. Exemplary in every way. So amen to that, Nicodemus. That's pretty much all I have to say on this scene. So shalom, shalom.